everybody. Welcome to the Jamie Dawn Show. I am your hostess, Jamie Dawn, and it happens to be Monday, May 13th, 2024. I'm excited to be live with you today. Thank you so much, Jay, for producing and just doing all the magic behind the scenes. If this is your first time joining and you're here live, you can join the chat room. Go to 12radio.com. You'll see a chat button on the left-hand side and click that, and you'll be sent to our private Facebook page where Jay manages, and he'll let you in. And if this isn't your first time, welcome back. I'm thrilled that you are listening, and I know there's so many great shows here and all the other advisors that I work with at One Two Listen. We're just so happy to be there. We happen to be on sale today too. We had an extended Mother's Day sale. Mother's Day, of course, was yesterday, and as I said on my social media, happy Mother's Day to everybody. We've all got a mother, whether she was present or not, whether she was a good mother or not. So someone gave life to us, gave birth to us, and so we honor that. And if it's not your natural mother, your biological, should I say, that you are connected with, I hope there is a mother figure in your life that you can honor during this time as well. And I love the number 13. I just have to tell you. Today being the 13th, it's not Friday the 13th, but whatever. I love the number 13 because it's all about magic. And yeah, in tarot, it's the death card, but death is really the gateway to liberation. And this is it's a time of transition that we know that one cycle ends and a new one begins. And that's actually where we're at these days. We're just in this constant death and rebirth process. I know we're all feeling that. Before I dive in too deep into the show, I've been a little out of rhythm because of being away at Mystery School, which I will be going again starting May 22nd until June 2nd. So my shows during those 2 Mondays, I will not be live. I am going to record a show with my daughter, Tatiana, that I'll probably air during that time that I'm gone. And who knows what else will arrive. But as I said, I've been a little out of rhythm, where I like to start the show by getting into our heart space and allowing the heart to just be that gentle place of coming online and a resonant field that we can listen with a different type of ears. The heart is the organ of perception, and it's important for us to not just be in the romantic side of the heart, but to be in that agape side. And so I'm just going to invite everyone to just take a moment wherever you are, and you don't have to close your eyes unless you want to. Closing the eyes invites stillness of the mind. It invites the mind to become quiet and allow ourselves to focus on what is present in this moment. But if you're not closing your eyes, that's okay. We can reach grounded presence with just a breath. If we breathe in through the heart space and down through the feet, just a conscious breath, feeling ourselves really grounded and present in this moment. And for the next hour that I'm here, a little less than an hour, there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, just right here. And giving this gift of present moment to yourself. And then we take another breath in through the heart and out through the heart. And just really feeling the heart expanding, feeling it come online with our attention, because where attention goes, energy flows. And that heart space is a place that we ground first so that we can stabilize it. And when the heart is stabilized, it feels safe. And when the heart feels safe, it can open. And from that open space, we invite curiosity, we invite awareness, we invite love and compassion, and we invite giving without expecting anything in return. So there's that feeling of service, of devotion that comes in as well. And I hope that you can sense and feel my devotion to the work I do, which is being of service to all of you. And, it's just a beautiful opportunity to expand and widen the resonation that the heart space offers. And so now we'll really kick into the show. I'm not going to take a commercial today. I'm going to have a drink of water, though. Okay, as I had a little tickle in my throat. And thank you. Thanks just for being here. I was back east. Some of you who have been following me, you know that I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in South Carolina, left there and went to Florida, got pregnant at a young age, 18, got married at 19, had 2 kids, and raised them in the great state of Virginia. And my daughter, as you know, has moved out here to the West Coast with me, which is, I've been here now 4 years, for almost 4.5 years, loving every minute. And my daughter and her husband moved out here, but my son and daughter-in-law and my grandbaby, who is 7 months old, almost 8 months old, are back east. And so I went back east to see them. And I mentioned in my Celestial Wisdom video that I was going to surprise my parents, my dad actually. And so now I can offer an invitation. It's an invitation to pray or invitation to offer energy, whatever words you want to use, whatever. But my dad has some health stuff going on that he's, working with. He's fine. He says he is, how do I say this? He's content with the process, and whatever happens, happens. It's somewhat of a serious issue. And so I decided if I was going to be that close to my parents, I needed to go down and see them. Plus, it was, the week before Mother's Day, so I had a chance to see my mom and say Happy Mother's Day early to her and all of that. And my parents and I have a history of expansion and contraction. And part of that is because my parents are extremely religious and I'm not. I just don't embrace religion. What I do embrace is traditions. I embrace routines, if you will, anything that allows us to become better humans. I'm all about that. And so because I do not embrace the Christianity the way they do, it has made it difficult in the past. Plus, I've made some decisions in my life as an adult, which I'm allowed to do, that they didn't always agree with. And so it just caused some separation for us at time. But we have found over the last several years some great healing and great opportunities for us to both, I say both, my dad and I, my mom and I have always been pretty close, but for my dad and I to offer an invitation for us to connect without projecting our own agendas and without trying to change the other person and that sort of thing. And then, there's still moments, you go back home or you're around your family of childhood, and oftentimes it's hard not to revert back to parent-child relationship, even though I'm almost 50 and, that sort of thing. But anyways, it was a very sweet visit. And it was fun to surprise my dad as my mom and I coordinated me showing up at the house before he knew, and my mom ended up taking the day off, and we spent some really precious time together where my dad even typed up a bulleted list of his life, all of his experiences in life and the people who was most influential in his life and that sort of thing. And they're in my parents are in their early 70s, so they're still pretty young in my opinion. But to have that outline was really powerful because it gave me a chance to ask my dad questions and hear stories that, as kids, you're growing up and you're selfish, you're thinking about your own self as a kid, your own world doesn't, as long as your world doesn't change, you're happy kind of thing. Anyways, I didn't know some of the details and some of the stories. And so it was kind of cool to listen to that and just get to know both of my parents on a deeper level. One of the things that came to me as my dad was sharing some stories, and it's one that I hadn't thought about in a long time, but it was another moment in my life when my intuition really peaked and as a child. And it was, my dad was is a Marine, however you want to say that. Because as they say, once a Marine, always a Marine, right? Anyways, he was in the Marine Corps for 32 years. And I'll try and keep this short because you don't need to get lost in all the details, but there are different officer rankings and that sort of thing. And he was enlisted for a time being, and then went reserves, and then enlist, and then active again. And there's a thing called COW, which is, or CWO, I'm sorry, Chief Warrant Officer, and there's 4 levels. And the 5th level was something that was brand new in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and very few people ever got it. And you had to have an admiral push that through and that sort of thing. Well, um, I knew that my dad was a CW4, and I got him for his birthday, I think it was, a Marine Corps blanket that I had printed on there, his name with Chief Warrant Officer 5. And I gave that to him, and he said, you're a little, I'm not sure how you know this. He goes, I'm not a 5. I've only applied for it. And he didn't tell anybody except for my mom, and it hadn't gone through. And then within 2 months after receiving that blanket, it went, the COW5 was approved, and that sort of thing. And so it was just a cool moment where when I was tuning in, and this is a good reminder for, we all have the gift of intuition, it's our sixth sense, that when we get grounded, when we become present and open and curious and tuning in, it's like we're tuning in our radio receiver, we tune into that energy field, that person, that thing, that vibration, then we're able to receive information that is, I'll say, otherworldly or unseen, that can now manifest into this current reality, this 3D reality. And those are the kind of things that, I've been practicing and honing since I was a child, but um, and obviously what I've made a profession doing, but I want to encourage all of us that we have this ability, if we're willing to take that conscious breath, just like I led you through with the grounding and getting to the heart space. If you're able to do that, and then you tune in to a particular energy field, you'll be able to access that information also. And so I just wanted to share what's happening with me. Um, we also, and so in this show, what I want to talk about is, again, a little bit about what was happening for me, but then I'm going to give you a card of the week, which happens to be the Four of Wands. I just pulled that right before Jay connected me to radio here. And so I'll share with the Four of Wands. Some of you may be familiar with it, but I'll give you my interpretation. And if it resonates, great. And if it doesn't, let it go. And, the geomagnetic storms that happened a week ago, those were kind of cool. Hopefully some of you saw those. But even if you didn't see the effects of the lights in the sky, Mother Nature doesn't disappoint. Many of you, if not all of you, probably felt the geomagnetic storm and the influence that it can have on the human body, the human energy field, and those who are highly, highly sensitive. We're probably receiving some pretty big downloads that you'll need time for integration. If you didn't take the time for integration, please do so. If you feel a little wobbly or unstable still from it, then it's important to ground. It's important to get in nature and find ways that these downloads could continue for quite some time. So just be aware, especially if you're in the middle of being reprogrammed. And what I mean by that is, some of you who are listening have had a moment where you go, wait a minute, this reality is not real. It's not what I think it is, even though it kind of is what I think it is. But what do I think anymore, right? And I'll call it an existential crisis, but I think it's deeper and bigger than that. It's more of this awakening inside of you of remembering something that may have been locked away, and you forgot. We all forget when we come into this life of certain things, and so you may have a remembrance, and you need time to wrap your head around what is actually happening for you. So, which is a perfect segue into our Four of Wands and interpreting for that with our card of the week. But the Four of Wands is a joyful celebration, and it means that some things are developing, that there's a time where we can appreciate some of the good things in life. And I've talked to many of you that life has been hard lately, and it has, We've got relationships are up and making big decisions, and maybe some things haven't worked, and, that sort of thing. And so it can be very discouraging. And I feel like this week in particular, that you can relax a little bit, let our hair down, just enjoy some time together, maybe have some friends over. There, I would say too that a few of you are going to have a milestone to celebrate this week or into the next week. Somebody graduating or a birthday or a wedding, something like that. And so the Four of Wands is a beautiful card to remind us to just appreciate the little things. It's also associated with home environment. So you may be purchasing a home or you're ready to settle down and getting, really into your groove in the new habitat. So this week can offer that to you, the energy of it. Tune into it. Remember, if we tune into the energy field, then we can receive the information that we consciously didn't have access to even just a minute ago. Um, Also, I'll point out that the Four of Wands, it's a 4 in numerology. 4 symbolizes stability, firm foundations, which is where we're at in this Taurus energy. So here we have the tarot card of the Four of Wands, and we have the numerology of the number 4, stability, foundation, strength. You think about it from the reliability, dependable, right? And then the grounded presence of Taurus. And here's the astrology. You bring these three together, you've got a beautiful picture, just like when you're looking at it from an astrological standpoint. If you look at your sun, moon, and rising sign with your scopes and things like that, then it gives you a more well-rounded picture of how this energy could be influencing you at this time. And so, use it, tap into it. This is the co-creation process that we get to experience as life continues to move forward. I jokingly say we can either be a speed bump in life's way or we get on the ride and we go with it. And I would say I'm going with it. I'm really good at sabotaging myself with my mind, and I start overthinking things, and it definitely disrupts my sleep. I've been up early the last couple of mornings because I roll over and all of a sudden my mind just starts thinking about whatever, what does the day hold, or what do I need for this or that, or oh my gosh, I have to send that email, or whatever. And it's like, and instead of fighting it, I'll get up and start my day. So we go with the flow and we just allow whatever gets revealed to be revealed. And remember too that we have the tools we need. you know we have the ability to be able to meet whatever shows up in that moment. So trust that you've been groomed for it, that you have all that you need. And if you need the extra support or the reminder, you need the encouragement, call me, come see me, 1-2-listen. I know our other advisors also want to help. That's what we're here for. So please just know you're not alone when it comes to that. So the other thing I do want to point to, even though I have my show, I should be live next Monday as well, but we have a full moon next week. And I just want to touch on that one because the energy builds before the actual full moon. And so what I don't want to do, I guess I do, I want to pull the veil back and help you guys remember, maybe you're not going as lunatic. I'm joking about that, the lunar with the moon. Maybe you're not as lunatic as you think, because especially if you're high sensitive, you're going to feel the effects of it, right? And so I just want to put some structure to it and allow you to know that you are supported and that it's okay to experience whatever you experience. And so this particular full moon is the Sagittarius full moon. And when you've got Sagittarius Gemini involved, there's a lot of mental energy and a lot of communication, a lot of connections that happen. But you think about it, Sagittarius is all about the expansion of the mind and broadening our horizons through experiences, speaking truth. We want the truth, and then Gemini just disseminates it in a way that it can be fun and flirty, but it can also, coupled with the Sagittarius energy, it could be cutting. They say the truth is like a sword, a double-edged sword, right? Because even though the truth may hurt, it also sets us free, because now we're not unaware of maybe somebody's intentions or what was really happening, and that sort of thing. So we'll have to deal with whatever gets revealed, and that's what often happens at a full moon, is there's revelation and enlightenment that happens, and the enlightenment is not always easy. It's not always pleasant. Sometimes it can be, and other times it may be like, oh, by the way, I've decided that I don't want this, I don't know, job or this relationship or whatever. And that's not always easy to deal with. So, but what I can say is that we will have the tools we need to deal with whatever shows up, or we wouldn't be given the opportunity. So it's our job to practice grounding. It's our job to practice taking a breath and self-regulating, watching that parasympathetic nerve as it kicks in. One of the things that I will say is that this week in particular, we still have that Uranus in Taurus energy, and the sun is going to conjoin Jupiter on Saturday while Venus is conjoining Uranus. And so it's going to be a little unpredictable when it comes to some things, but it also could be a very lucky day for us, or as we lead into the weekend, because it's, like I say, it happens on Saturday, sort of like anything goes in love, money, and relationships when you've got Venus and Uranus involved. And then you've got the Sun Jupiter, which can be very optimistic and give us some real positive experiences, positive opportunities to generate the ability to manifest greater potential in the world. There's a lot of creativity and imagination that happens during this time. So you could have new ideas that I mentioned, I think it was last week. Anyways, I can't remember when, but last week, this week, I mean, these next couple of weeks are really powerful and potent for launching things and for giving things out and finding that passion and purpose that others can benefit from. And of course you can too. So you definitely want to continue to tune in with yourself and with each other on, what's the best qualities that I can bring out for myself and for others. The other pin on the map this week is we have Mercury moving into the sign of Taurus on Wednesday. And right now with Mercury in Aries, things, moving pretty fast. We may be communicating fast. We may find ourselves having courageous conversations, which are wonderful, because I'm going to talk about communication today too, give some pointers and some awareness around that, because here we are in this age of technology and science and awareness, all the different levels of evolution that seem to be happening. They're happening at rapid speed, at air-like quality. And if you think about it, air moves so quickly because it's unobstructed. It just blows, right? Like the wind blows or whatever. Well, communication, even though we can't tangibly see communication, we know it's happening. We can see it in body language. And that's something with Mercury and Taurus that we're going to be more attuned with, is that we'll probably be more methodical and purposeful with our words, with organizing information, but the body language, because remember, Taurus is very sensual, so it taps into our six senses, and our bodies are going to be talking to us constantly, which is a wonderful reminder to trust what your body is telling you. Don't be afraid to go into those feelings and let the body react to whatever you're feeling. Doesn't mean you act upon those feelings when I say that, but if you notice, let's say sadness shows up and you feel a constriction in the body, then feel the sadness until that constriction loosens, right? And if it's elation or jubilance, or I like that word, jubilance. Let's go with that. If it's if you feel jubilant, then, allow your body to feel it. Maybe you move your body in a way that just feels happy or, exuberant or whatever. But really listen, because as we're constantly learning to relate to each other and we're relating to ourselves, if we can tune into our bodies, then we can tune into other people's energy fields even more astute than we do now. And so what we're practicing, it's a practice constantly of like, okay, pause, think about this. What am I feeling? Checking in, right? What's actually happening inside of me? And then How do I want to communicate that? How do I want to share that? And when Mercury's in Taurus, we may be more purposeful in what we're sharing and how we're sharing it. It's also a great time to solidify plans. So if you, with Mercury and Aries, you have planted seeds, you've been talking about things, you've been uh, wanting certain things in your life, and you've communicated that, well, now's the time, as Mercury moves into Taurus, to solidify those plans. What does that really look like tangibly? You know, I'll use the example of a couple that has been dating for a while and wants to move in, and they've agreed, okay, we talked about it, or we at least planted the seed. Now let's talk some more seriously. What would that look like? How would the bills be split? And who would move into whose place? Or would we buy a place together, or rent a place together, right? And so you go through those more practical steps of what that might look like. It's a great time for those of you who are looking for promotion or a raise or a new job. Have those conversations and say, this is what it will do for me. This is why I deserve it. And then what the responsibilities and roles are that I need to play in order to justify this raise or whatnot. So there's just some examples of how we can use the Mercury in Taurus energy. And as I mentioned, the Jupiter-Sun conjunction, or as I like to say, canoodling, and the Venus-Uranus canoodling that happens on Saturday. It's a wonderful setup because we've got, like I say, that full moon in Sagittarius on the 23rd. And then we've also, at the end of the month, we've got Jupiter moving into the sign of Gemini. So Jupiter changes signs every 12 to 13 months, depending on the year. And it's been in Taurus since last year, of course, and now it's going to move into the sign of Gemini. So you think back 12 years ago, what kind of themes were up for you? It's not necessarily going to be the exact situation or experience, but the themes may show up for you. So look at where Jupiter is transiting in your chart and what houses it influences and what planet it contacts and things like that. And that will give you some more information, or at least some idea of what you can start expecting with Jupiter in Gemini. And remember, Jupiter is the planet of expansion. I'll talk more about this when I get back from mystery school, but I want to put this pin on the map as well, which I'll probably talk about next week too, so you can be prepared that we'll feel the shifts happening, and oftentimes we'll feel it just before it changes signs. And so with Jupiter, it's a planet of expansion and good luck and fortune, and it does everything bigger and better, if you will. It's optimistic and that sort of thing. It's considered a benefic in astrology. And in the sign of Gemini, those of you who are familiar with Gemini, we are chatty Cathys. We're in the know of everything. We're connecting, and we're maybe traveling short distances. We're connected to our local community. Our friendships are really important, our siblings, that sort of thing. That's all very Gemini third house kind of energy that we're working with. And so we may find ourselves with an abundance of friends, or we find ourselves traveling around our area more, maybe we're commuting, we're going back to the office kind of thing, or we're signing contracts and making new connections that way. So those are just some things that we'll be working with. Now, remember too, there's the shadow side to Jupiter, and that is the overindulgence and exaggeration. So it's possible that we may overwhelm ourselves by adding too many conversations and gossips and people in our lives that we're just like, I can't keep up with everything. Oh my God, I need some quiet time. I need to withdraw. So just notice that also could come into play. But it's a very light kind of energy, which I really appreciate. And so back to this coming weekend. I know I'm all over the place. You guys can catch up. You know what? I'm running alongside of you. I'm just rolling with your energy. So if it seems like I'm all over the place, I am, but so are you. So we're in this together, right? I'm just trying to keep up with you. So anyways, but the weekend, we are also looking at in relationships, if we prefer partners who are more in tune with the perception of life, maybe some fellow enthusiasts, positive thinkers who appreciate more subtle qualities, the little things, as I mentioned. These are some things that we'll be looking at instead of, like, if you're somebody who could care less about the accumulation of money and social power, then this is a time where it's like, no, I want the little things. I want the things that actually matter in my life. There's nothing wrong with money and there's nothing wrong with social power. It's how we use it. Again, tool or weapon, right? And when Venus is conjoining Uranus, there's also that we could have a sudden change in our desires or a sudden unexpected change in our what we value. We could find that something triggers us. It's been lying under the surface and it triggers us to go, wait a minute, I really want this. I need to disrupt the normal routine in my relationship, or I know I said I wanted this before, but now I don't think I do. I actually, when I tune into myself, what I really want is something very different. And so you may find conversations and things like that pop up where you get surprised by, and it can be a good surprise. Not all surprises are bad. I know some of you are going, I don't want to be surprised. But, you may be surprised that someone, cares as much as they do about you, or does something really nice for you and you don't, that's not their norm, whatever. I mean, I'll use an example for me, make it personal, is that my beloved does not do gifts. It's just not his love language. It's more quality time, and that's really the biggest thing is quality time for him and acts of service. But giving gifts is not really his love language. So when I got back home this last weekend, he picked me up from the airport and he had tulips waiting for me when I got to the house. And that was a big deal because he's never bought me flowers before. And we've been together almost over 2 years. So that was a big deal. And I so appreciate it. But I was totally shocked. And yes, I did shed a few happy tears. I've been very weepy. I don't know about you guys, but I've been very weepy lately. And I mean, I have no problem crying especially when it's appropriate. I don't force myself to do it. But it was like all the little things just kept tearing me up over the last week or two. So, and I know that's part of the energy field, the geomagnetic storms and all of that. So I'm just sharing that to say it's okay if you're in that same place, if you have spontaneous laughter this weekend, don't be surprised with the Sun and Jupiter and Venus Uranus energy. You also, I will say, there's going to be some chance encounters at this time where if you're single and you're looking for love, you don't have to look hard. Just be yourself, be individual. That's the thing about Uranus. It loves that independent individual kind of way of being. And the more you're yourself, the more you attract people who appreciate that, and those that don't appreciate it, they can just keep walking. And so if things have felt, it's an interesting juxtaposition because you've got the Sun, Jupiter, Venus, Uranus, Mercury, all in the sign of Taurus, which is very steady, very, it likes routine. It doesn't really like the surprises, if you will. And so when you have that energy involved, it's like, okay, time to break up the routine when you've got Uranus here. And it's not always welcome, right? But at the same time, if we get too routine, we can go dull. What I mean by dull is that we just become unconscious. We just do things because we're doing them. We're not thinking about why we're doing them and what the impact is on each other, on ourselves, that sort of thing. So there's a gift here to that shakeup. I mentioned before too that Uranus is considered the great severer because it comes in and it breaks things up. And while that's not easy at times, it's also something that helps bring us into that next level of consciousness, that next level of evolution. Okay, now I feel like it's the appropriate time, since I've brought in all the energies that are coming up for us in the next week or two and ongoing, to talk about the relational field and communication. And as I mentioned before, communication is now king. Information is king. Look at what's happening with AI and technology and everything else. We have so much information available to us, but how do we communicate it? If we weren't given the skills to communicate, it makes things very difficult to relate, to not get hurt, to understand. And so communication and communication and communication is king. So you think about it this way, when you're communicating, whether it's one-on-one or with a group, there's a third entity that's present. Okay. So it could be you in the group or you and this individual, and then there's the relational field. And that relational field, because you're building that relationship or you're in that relationship, it's important to manage it. It's important to nurture it. And in doing so, if we take on that awareness that I'm actually nurturing the field, the relationship field, not necessarily the other person, it helps to keep things from becoming personal, and two, it helps with the health of the relationship. And so to manage that relational field, what do we do first? We ground. I'm going to keep coming back to that because that is the foundation of the human experience, grounding. We came into this world and we became human. We are nature. We are ground. So we ground first, then we check in. What's happening inside of me? What am I feeling? What am I sensing? What do I need? Because I matter. And if I can do that, if I can check in with myself and say, what's really happening right now inside of me? What do I need and I want? What am I feeling? Then I can show up for the other person, for the group, in that fullness, in that genuineness. And then I invite whatever is present to reveal itself. What is happening? Oh, I'm feeling tense, or oh, I feel relaxed, or oh, I'm feeling a little scattered, right? Oh, got to go back to ground. And then I can speak from that place. And as I mentioned in the beginning when we're doing the resonation of the heart, is that we're stabilizing the heart space and the throat where the words are, the sound of the words are coming out. My mouth, that if we can stabilize ourselves, then we can open and we can speak from this place of truth. And the truth, even if it isn't what somebody wants to hear, so it may feel like it's hurting them because they're attached to their agenda or what they want, we're not harming them in the way in which we say it. And then our words can become tools of healing and not tools of harming. So there's different communication styles out there, and I'm sure many of you have been on the receiving end, or you've done all of these communication styles at one point in your life. I know I have anyways. But there's the aggressive communication style, which is very much about more like the authoritarian, right? It's so the way to identify it, it seems obvious, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. But it has this style where you're either intentionally or unintentionally belittling the other person or telling them what to do. You're being very aggressive with it, and you're trying to dominate the discussion. And there's a lot of times there's phrases like, you made too many mistakes, or just do as you told. I mean, parents love using that one. Why? Because I told you so, right? That's the aggressive communication style. And that not, I will say this, it's not the style that will win hearts and minds. So let's just leave that. But then there's the opposite, which is the passive style. Well, that's really about avoidance. That's really going, I don't want to deal with this, so I'm just going to give in. I'm going to be submissive about it. And the more submissive speech patterns make it easier to deal with difficulty and things like that, but it doesn't necessarily invite collaboration, and it doesn't really offer understanding. So you're not nurturing that relational field by being passive either, right? So some of the passive communication might sound like, oh, it's no big deal, we'll fix it. Or I don't want to start a fight. So let's just let this one go. So there's that passiveness. And then, of course, there's the passive aggressive. We move those together, right? And that's where you kind of mix and blend the other, where unfortunately it doesn't land very well because you're not really speaking truth. It's more of like I'm resentful that I'm not getting what I want, but I'll give in to it if that it's more like sarcasm, right? Like, sure, I'm fine with doing things your own way. And then maybe under your breath, you're like, yeah, it's never going to work, but whatever. Or, yeah, I'm happy to help, but then you do the opposite, right? Um, or we dismiss the bad behavior. Oh, no, I'm not upset. It's okay you didn't hear me. It's okay you didn't really listen to me. Is it really okay? No, it's not. No, it's really not. And then, of course, um, there's then the manipulative communication style. And that's where it's like you're trying to bend someone to your will, but it's not truth. It's not sincere, you know? And so the manipulative, it can be a little hard to understand or to hear and to identify, um, because it has a quality of like, oh, it's no big deal, you know, but when really it is. And manipulation often falls into like the victim mentality, right? So it might be, oh, I have to get this done by a certain time. Oh, if only someone was available to help me. Oh, woe is me. Oh, I rushed to get this done by this time. I wonder if it's good enough. Please validate me. Please tell me, instead of being more clear about what it is that we're trying to communicate. And then the last style of communication is assertive, and that's where we show up with confidence and say without monopolizing the conversation. And it offers an opportunity, it's more invitational to collaborate. And, you can agree to disagree kind of thing, even though I know some people hate that phrase. I agree. I'm going to agree to disagree with you. But with the assertive communication style, it's more like, hey, this is my thoughts around it. Anybody else have some thoughts, right? It's much more collaborative. And so the tools that I would offer when it comes to the communication piece is, like I said at the beginning, there's that check-in with yourself. What's really happening for you? And if you're feeling reactive instead of responsive, it's a time to take a moment and to communicate that. I need a moment. I'm still processing what you're saying, or I'm being triggered right now and I need to self-regulate. I need to take a moment to pull myself out of this and become an observer. Because again, you're nurturing and feeding the relational field. And one of the things that I love doing this with my daughter, because she's a therapist, and so we practice this regularly with each other, is before, like, I'll ask her a question, she'll pause before she automatically answers. We can use this Mercury and Taurus energy exactly for that. Mercury and Taurus, if you know somebody natally who has that natally in their chart, you may find that they speak slower and that they take a moment to process things before responding. It's a really good thing. I know it may feel like it takes forever when you have that pause, or that maybe you're afraid you'll be perceived as being stupid or something, but I can tell you it's a beautiful practice to do. And so we pause before we answer, and we check in with ourselves, and then we come from that place of truth. And I'll give my daughter props on she had texted me the other day and she goes, hey mom, this is a sensitive matter, or a sensitive subject. Would you be willing to dot dot dot? And I love how she set me up for that, where it was like, yeah, I know that this could be uncomfortable. However, I need to ask this question from a place of my truth and my sincerity. So I think that's something that we can continue to work with. And that pause makes a huge difference. I can't tell you how many times I have paused and said, that's interesting. Let me get back to you on that. Or from a place of truth. Again, a personal example, because that's all I have to interact with right now is me. Um, Personal example would be, my father he was an investigator with an organization for many years and did intelligence in the Marine Corps and stuff. And so he's very inquisitive, and oftentimes it can sound like he's interrogating you when really it's just his way of relating. He's trying to get to know you. He's trying to keep, the connection going, that sort of thing. But there's been times where the questions that he'll ask I will have to say, you know what, I'm just not ready to answer that question right now. And as an adult, I have that prerogative. I don't say that last phrase, but I do remind myself of that. I don't have to answer the questions that somebody's giving me. The answer could be, I'm not prepared to answer that right now. That's the answer, right? And so I think that also saves a lot when it comes to um, the relationship and conversations, arguments, that sort of thing. And I say this from experience. Arguments don't have to be combative. Arguments can be a place of understanding, again, if we have the tools. So we check in, we ground, and we speak from that truth, and we stay open to the other person's view, letting the other person feel whatever it is they feel, react however they need to react. But if we're nurturing the relational field, we're not taking it personally, because their reaction, their response, whatever, is going into the relational field. It's not about you. Remember the 4 agreements, right? Don't take nothing personally. And so it's taken me years, but I have made a practice out of the mantra, it's not about me, it's not about me, it's not about me. Whenever I'm having conversations with people and they're reacting, or they're saying, you know, you did this when you triggered, you know, and they do the accusatory thing, and it's like, this isn't about me. They're actually sharing with me their perception of what I said or did. I need to honor that. They're allowed to feel what they feel. Now, I can certainly own whatever my behavior or communication was, to be able to respond with, I can tell that the way in which I did this or said this clearly did not land the way it was supposed to, and it has upset you. And for that, I apologize. I can own that. And then I can stay open and soft. What do you need right now from me for us to be able to resolve this? And going into that place, because as you've heard me say, maybe not, if the relationship is more important than the subject matter, stay with it. And you may have to have the conversation more than once. I shared last week, I was very brave. I was very proud of myself, or 2 weeks ago I said this, that I planted a seed with my beloved, and that was it. And his response later in the day was, I'm not ready for this conversation. No problem. Now, have we had the conversation since? Nope. But you know what? When and if it becomes important enough to have it, then we will again. But the relationship with him and the way in which we interact with each other is, I'm not pushing this. Is this a make or break? Not yet. Could it be? Yeah. Down the road, we'll see. But at the end of the day, it's my choice, and the relationship with him is worth it. And it's more important than me getting my way. And I think that's the other thing when it comes to the communications, is that if we are in a place where we are so fixed on the outcome, it has to be my way. If I don't get this outcome, am I going to get passive? Am I going to get aggressive? Am I going to get passive aggressive? Am I going to get manipulative? What's the style that I'm going to work with if I'm that attached to my own agenda? And that's where those 4 styles can really kick in, because we want what we want, right? And that's the gift, I guess, of maturity too, though, is that you do eventually see things of like, you know what? I don't have to have that in my life. And if I do, if that's a make or break, then I have other decisions, other choices to make. So, and then how do I communicate that? I'll give you an example. I want you guys to be able to walk away with something tangible, because we're going to be faced with these things, these situations in the next few weeks, months, years. And that is, so if you are interacting with someone and they are being accusatory, right? I mentioned that, then being able to say, I certainly can see that you're upset about this, or that you're very passionate about it, or whatever. And for whatever I did, I own. I apologize. How do we make this right? That's one thing. Another thing is, if there is a make or break in your life, a certain subject, I always talk about how new relationships start and they're like, oh, well, I have to get married. And the other person doesn't want to. And if that's a make or break, you're not going to change that person's mind over the years. I mean, every once in a while that can happen, but, or children, right? Some people want children, some people don't, those kinds of things. Then you do have decisions to make, and to be able to go to that person and say, you know, as much as I love you and I love us and all the things that we represent, um, this particular subject is extremely important to me, and it is something that I want to experience in this lifetime. And so I need to partner with somebody who wants that same experience. And what you're doing is you're inviting the other person, if they are choosing that experience or not, with you. And if they're not, it's painful. But remember, like I said before, pain is part of life. Suffering is our choice. And it's painful to let go, but it's suffering to hold on. So that's what we're working with. And we're going to have these conversations over and over and over again. So I invite us all to keep practicing and being gentle with ourselves, because we're going to make mistakes. We're not going to do it perfectly. You know, I know I've screwed up quite a few conversations in the past. It's an interesting thing, because when I practice self-forgiveness, I lose the feeling of regret, and am able to be in a place of openness, a place of acceptance. But if I could go back in time, I wish I had done some things differently and said things differently. So is it regret? I don't know. I don't know if I have that same pull or sense of energy around it, because I have forgiven myself. I was perfectly imperfect human. I was immature. I didn't know what I didn't know, all that sort of thing. Um, so, but like I say, I wish I had done and said some things differently to certain people. And, one of the things I'll also offer in the last couple of minutes here is that there are times where you do have to be forceful in the conversation, where it's not okay that somebody mistreats you, abuses you, that sort of thing, setting those boundaries, but you can communicate the boundaries and forcefulness of them still in a way that isn't harmful. So, where if someone is being aggressive with you, to be able to look at them and say, it is not okay for you to speak to me that way. This is my boundary. And if you want to continue a conversation with me, then we need to tone it down. And I'm happy to continue the conversation in a calming way. And so there's nothing wrong with communicating those boundaries. And I think that's the other thing that we're going to be experiencing over the next couple weeks in particular, is we're going to be revisiting boundaries and making sure that they're in place, because they're going to be pushed. And not always consciously, because like I say, people get excited, they want their own thing, they're not thinking about somebody else, they're in their own world, because we're the center of our own universe. So our boundaries are going to get pushed. So it's going to be important for us to keep communicating them. And sometimes you have to communicate it more than once, because you're asking somebody, especially if it's somebody you've known for a while and they've known you and the way you've been, if you've changed something, think about that Venus Uranus, if something suddenly shows up that you're like, whoa, wait a minute, I actually want this or value this, they may need time for adjustments. And I think that's the other thing, is that we have to give ourselves time to adjust. I mentioned the integration time with the geomagnetic storms and the influence it had on us. Give yourself time to adjust. And you don't have to have the answer right then and there. That'll be the gift, too, of Mercury in Taurus, is that we get more patient with having to have the answer right now. All right, you guys, I have just gone on and on and on, and I'm so appreciative that you have stuck around. And if you're not sticking around, that's okay, too. And if you're just tuning in on an archive, thank you, thank you. And thank you again, Jay, for producing. Come find me at 1-2-Listen. I will be there throughout the week. And stay tuned for all the other great shows. I will see you guys, or I'll talk to you guys next Monday. Have a great week. Take care.